Well, it took us 30 minutes, but we're going to start now. I apologize for that. So if you're outside, please come in, take a seat. Ladies and gentlemen, friends, General Secretary, welcome, good afternoon. Welcome to the first Greek forum about seagrass beds organized by Seagrass Alliance. My name is Anna Dimitropoulou. I am the Executive Director of CBF, Cyclades Preservation Fund, the institution that organized this initiative along with the Hellenic Center for Marine Research, Aianos Thalassa, and the two more Greek members of Conservation Collective, the international family of CBF, Ionian and Argosaronic Foundation. Our strategic partner in this ambitious effort and also our main fund is the Psychology Foundation. And thank you so much for this good participation that we have. And I'd also like to thank you for responding to our call. Representatives of universities, environmental organizations, NGOs, journalists, schools, citizens, and also representatives of the Greek administration and the Greek government. You're all here with us, and today and for the next 2 days. Now, once more, the sea joins us together. Our vision for this conference at the French Institute is to operate as a platform to exchange information and also do some networking in an effort to be able to showcase the total of the main actions that are realized or that are needed to be realized in our country regarding research, the protection of the Greek seagrass, the forests of Posidonia, which are one of the most productive ecosystems of the Mediterranean that has enormous benefits for the health of the sea and also for our economy. These days, we're going to talk a lot about the Posidonia fields. Nevertheless, our goal during these 3 days is to talk about the necessity of scientific identification and also the importance of participation and education to be inspired and also learn from best practices that are already being applied in some islands and also at the Mediterranean level with excellent guests from Greece and abroad. Thank you so much for being here with us today. So, in this forum, we are hoping to showcase isolated actions by encouraging synergies and closer cooperation among all the players, and also to create an atypical, let's say, collaboration between schools, municipalities, volunteers, and everyone that is willing to resume action in their own part of the sea. Please join the site of Greek Seagrass Alliance and let us know if you want to participate. We want to make the invisible become visible. We want to dive below all the boats that are sailing in the Greek waters and see where they anchor. We want to understand better the fish cultivations and what could it mean passive and active restoration. We would like to see the Posidonia fields that keep our beaches and our seas healthy, but we keep underestimating them as waste that are being gathered away before the sea season because we have forgotten what a natural beach looks like in the Mediterranean. We would also like to find solutions that are already being tested elsewhere successfully, to talk about threats, about the decisions that need to be made as a state, as a society, in order to deal with the many challenges in an effective way, and also shed some light in the elephant in the room, let's say, to find sources of funding for all the things that need to be done in order to safeguard this treasure hidden under the sea. Lastly, we will have the opportunity to discuss mature suggestions that can help in the institutional support for the safeguarding of seagrass beds. I would also like to thank Interreg Artemis and the Mediterranean Blue Forest from WWF Hellas for their help in the organization of this conference, and also the work meeting with the Greek administration that will take place in the third day of the forum, focusing on anchoring and restoration. I would also like to thank Sustainable Sailing Greece that takes up the initiative regarding yachting companies, the Hellenic Organization of Nature Protection that talks with people handling the ports and the ecological value of each beach in Greece. I would also like to thank the educational actions in collaboration with the Institut Français and the Cycladic Arts. And I never forget the Oceanography Institute of the Hellenic Center for Marine Research. This is why in 2021 we started dealing with the Posidonia issue, and the Anchors Away organization from the Hellenic Center for Marine Research was the first initiative, including the Mediterranean Posidonia Network. Frédéric Figuier will talk about this later on. We're very honored by your presence here today. So a warm applause to the researcher Maria Samlidi and her team for her knowledge, the passion that she shares with us during all those years of close cooperation. And I will close by saying that our forum will be completed on the third day with the movie Ocean by David Attenborough, under the aegis of IPK and National Geographic Pristine Seas. It is a second screening in Greece for all of you who were not here in the premiere in October 25, under the support of Martinos and Levev. Also, allow me to personally thank my team in CPS because they did their best in order to organize this forum, and we really hope we're going to have a lot of success. Now, let's move forward with the initial statements and then the main speeches, and then we will go outside in the yard for a little bit of wine and a discussion. Thank you. So I will now call to the podium Mr. Mathieu Abkral, the Scientific and University Cooperator Attaché and Deputy Director. Thank you again for your collaboration. Good afternoon. Good afternoon to all of you. Thank you, Annie. General Secretary, it is a great pleasure to have you here as
de vous accueillir ce soir à l'occasion de l'ouverture du tout premier forum grec sur les herbiers marins.
I would like to welcome you to the first day of the Greek Seagrass Forum. I would like to thank the organizers for the initiative, the Greek Island Seagrass Alliance, and the scientific partner and all the institutional partners for making this ambitious project a reality. This event is taking place in a very topical moment and has the support of the French Embassy, and we are in the position to be here all together for 3 days. In the context of this event that brings together different institutions, foundations, non-governmental organizations, marine professionals, and tourism professionals. This forum will be dedicated to seagrass and to Posidonia more particularly. We usually call them the forests under the sea. We need to highlight that they have different functions. They are shelters, they are the means for the oxygenation of the water, they reduce the corrosion of the coast. In other words, the protection of Posidonia means the protection of the marine biodiversity of the coastline, but also of our collective ability to deal with the climate change. This system, however, remains highly vulnerable and is under threat. The possibility that these forests have to reproduce is very limited. We share a common sea, the Mediterranean, and during the UN conference for the oceans in 2025, the French president stated that the preservation of marine forest is a main priority for the preservation of the climate, the protection of biodiversity, and of the coastal zones. This first Seagrass Forum here in Greece takes place a few days after the official visit of the French president in Athens. And even though we have talked extensively about geopolitical issues, the protection of the seas was in the heart of this visit, in the heart of the alliance between the two countries, and in the center of the action plan that the two countries have developed together. And at the same time, it has the support of Greece and the decision of Greece to introduce this topic in the Mercator concept. This will also be highlighted by Mr. Villers. This will show that France has committed itself to protect Posidonia. Moreover, the protection of ecosystem and of the seas can only become a reality through regional cooperation, but also through international cooperation. For this reason, fishing contributes to the Mediterranean Posidonian network, which brings together different bodies and experts that share ideas, knowledge, and best practices. In 2023, the Alliance Posidonia was set as a priority that had as an objective to bring together all stakeholders. We know that we can count on the Greek friends in our mission to protect the oceans. And I hope that this forum will lead to the development of sustainable solutions and that will mobilize all the interested parties in order to protect this very volatile system, vulnerable system. Thank you.
Να καλέσω στο βήμα τον Γενικό Γραμματέα Φυσικού Περιβάλλοντος και Υδάτων, τον κύριο Πέτρο.
Now let's call to the podium the Minister of Maritime, the Secretary General for Natural Environment and Water. First of all, I would like to relay the speech of the Minister. He had to go to Croatia for an international meeting and he couldn't be here with us today. And he has asked me to come here and to represent him. This shows his interest, the interest of the political leadership at the Ministry of the Environment regarding the maritime environment in general, and specifically the seagrass beds, the Posidonia meadows. Now, this has been proven with the organization of the conference that happened in April in 2024 regarding the subject, and also along with the announcements that we have made during this conference, of which the most important was the announcement of the creation of two very big sea parks, one in the Aegean, in South Cyclades, and not just that, and another one, a bigger park of 20,000 square kilometers in the Ionian Sea. And these parks have a peculiarity. Instead of other parks that exist in the Mediterranean and the Atlantic Ocean, of course, the Atlantic is an ocean, the size is quite different, but these parks are located in areas, and we really thought about it before doing it. Initially, we had thought of going to some areas that are easier, with less pressures. But we did the opposite, actually. We went to specific areas with difficulties, with human presence, whether by the permanent citizens or tourism. And we all know, of course, that tourism is quite important for a country, fishing and shipping. So contrary to what was happening before, we went to areas that was much more difficult to protect. So the bet was more difficult to win. There are things that need to be done in order for us to change the way in which we manage our sea environment, our maritime environment, and also things that will be seen by everyone, and also the Greek citizens and the tourists that will come visit. The most important protection elements in these areas are the Posidonia meadows, because the waters in Greece are quite deep. The Aegean Sea is a deep sea, and the Ionian also. So we do not have as great a presence as the one we have in the Thracian Sea, in Lemnos, in Samothraki, in Archeus Islands. Over there, the Posidonia meadows are quite plenty. But we're also trying to protect the seagrass bed. And of course, Posidonia is our first priority. We protect it anyway. In everything that we do, in all the projects that we do, in all the licensings that we give, because during the ecologic evaluation process, we are being called to consent or not to projects that are being developed in these sea regions. And the common practice, Mrs. Pedza is looking at me quite strictly now as a representative of the ministry. The common practice is that if Posidonia is hurt, the project cannot move on unless it is a project that is of the utmost importance and public benefit. I think that this has only happened once regarding a port. So pretty much our denial to license projects that affect the Posidonia meadows is pretty much complete. Of course, there are scientists that are way more able to talk about the Posidonia meadows than me, but I know that it plays a very important role in the function of the environment. A lot of fish live there. It absorbs CO2, copious amounts of CO2. And under this sense, it is a part of the ecologic balance for the collection of CO2 on the planet. And also we're trying to create a system, a carbon credit system, which will be used to make measurements that can be verified for the protection and the regeneration of Posidonia meadows, so that we can find private funding for these types of projects. Let me also add that the way to protect Posidonia meadows is to deal with the threats. What are the threats? Fishing, first of all, bad practices of fishing. Well, of course, this is not something very popular to say, but the reality is that the number one enemy of the marine environment is not carbohydrates, is not the bad capital, but the bad fishing practices. So this is what we first have to deal with. And for this reason, the number one measure that we take when it comes to the sea parks is to forbid fishing with trawlers. Yes, you'll tell me, of course, that trawlers is not the only type of boats used for fishing. Okay, everybody has to share this planet, and the reality is that of course, when we talk about Greece, it has a very extensive coastline, so the control, as Mr. Kyriazopoulos, my colleague, says, controlling this entire coastline is quite difficult. We cannot have a little boat in every port and every gulf, always on guard to catch the fishermen. There are systems, of course. Of course, we have a lot of systems, and the technology helps us a lot, and we are being called to deal with those issues. And the very good collaboration that we have with the Ministry of Shipping, we have a friendly relationship because we both pretty much work for the same ministry. So we've been friends for many years. And another important threat is uncontrolled anchoring. And of course, we are not planning to stop boats from throwing anchor, but it should be done under a specific set of rules so that the seabed is protected, and gradually go to start using floating anchors so that there is no further damage to the seabed, which are more often than not in closed gulfs, in shallow waters, where most ships go to dock. This is something that will happen gradually with the help of the Hellenic Center for Marine Research. We will do a research together along with the Ministry of Shipping. We do have an institutional framework that is already set. And we will start with pilot programs in order to see how the system is going to work. We will discuss those issues with Mr. Kyriazopoulos in the next weekend in Nafplio. And of course, all together, along with the scientific community, we count on their scientific opinion. We will continue charting the sea environment to find and locate the Posidonia meadows. And I think that all of us together, we will soon have tangible results and thus improving the way we manage things. And thank you so much.
Ευχαριστούμε και εμείς, κύριε Βαρελίδη.
Thank you, Mr. Varelidis. We heard the name Kyriazopoulos quite a lot of times. So now the floor to Mr. Kyriazopoulos, who represents the Ministry of Maritime Policy. No, it's Maritime Policy and Ports. Since when? Since when? There is a mistake on the site. You probably consulted the wrong site, but it's okay. We're talking about the same thing. Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. My name is Vagelis Kyriazopoulos, General Secretary of the Ministry of Shipping, Maritime Policy and Ports. Thank you very much for the invitation. Events like this one are very important. Petros said previously that we go back quite a long time. Petros has been working in the Ministry of Environment, had been working in the Ministry of Environment, and I had been working in spatial planning. And I believe that this is associated with the topic that we are talking about. Many of the problems that emerge start and stop at a reasonable spatial planning. The advantage and disadvantage when we talk about the sea is that in the marine space we have the lack of the unfortunate event that we have the body of water. We have the seabed, and this is completely different to the land. In the land, we can see the flat of the earth, the surface of the earth. In the marine spatial planning, we need to manage the space in different dimensions. You have the water columns, for example, and depending on the depth of the sea, you may have 2 or 3 different needs in terms of management. So, fortunately, up until now, and despite the technical difficulties, there hasn't been and because of the technical difficulties, it hasn't been the right approach. Greece, as well as other countries like Belgium and France, have attempted to develop a special planning for the marine environment. So we do have an experience. Still, this is something new for us, but of great interest at the same time. I would like to convey the greetings of the minister, Mr. Kikilias, who is right now in Cyprus, since Cyprus has the European presidency. Tomorrow, there's going to be the informal meeting of the ministers of shipping in Cyprus. So Mr. Kikilias had to be present there, and that is why I would like to convey his greetings, as well as his interest in this topic. He would love to be here, but unfortunately, he had other obligations. I'm not going to say more than Petros did. This topic, Posidonia oceanica, is indeed very important. It is very important to protect and preserve Posidonia oceanica. The Port Authority and the Coast Guards are trying to protect the environment, the marine environment, the coastline, and protect the marine environment from humans, from potential pollution coming from the sea, from the land, from overfishing. Generally, uses of the sea multiply, the vessels multiply only in marine tourism. There is a 4-time increase in the vessels circulating in our country since 2019. 4 times more compared to 2019. The same increase has to do with navigation and with the different uses of the sea. This, of course, is a result of the technological advance. And that is why the ministry, with the resources it has, with the staff it has, and with the technology it has, needs to do hard work in order to ensure that this growth would not be to the detriment of the sea. And of course, we collaborate with other interested ministries in order to achieve that. When you asked me to give you an interview outside, here in the courtyard, you talked to me about my tie. My tie has an anchor on it. And I thought that you asked me to come here and talk about anchoring. And I have this tie in several different colors. It is my favorite tie. I have it in blue and in gray. So maybe you thought that I did it on purpose, but no, it is one of my favorite ties. Now, I would also like to tell you that I have a great interest in marine museums. I'm also interested in traditional vessels. Those who know me know that I'm passionate about the traditional wooden fishing vessels, and I'm an aficionado of the marine tradition. So now, with regard to anchorage, what does it mean, really? It means an embrace, something that is bent. Think of the shape of the anchor. It is something that is bent, and that is why we call it an embrace. It is something that protects what is inside. It is what gives us the possibility to anchor the vessel with the seabed. And if we take a look at the anchors ever since the Copper Age, we will see that with the increase of navigation, remain an important part of it. People had always wanted to travel and travel the seas, and that is why they used the vessels in order to travel and to communicate with other peoples. And the most difficult thing when we're talking about the seas and about these old times, that there were no compasses or anything, only one thing made the difference: anchor. It is what ensured the safety of the travelers while on sea. Anchor. And in the beginning, there were the stone anchors. If you have ever visited a marine museum, you will have seen these stone anchors. It was a big block of stone. There was a hole through which a rope passed. This rope was made of plants or fibers of leaves. And with this anchor, they were trying to ensure that the vessel would remain stable. It was a solution that allowed them to stay at the same spot. Then the anchors with the 3 holes emerged, the one on top and then 2 holes at the bottom. And there they placed some pieces of wood, so that when the anchor fell on the seabed, these woods that protruded managed to keep the anchor in the seabed. And then the technology evolved and anchors changed. Imagine a trireme, a wooden vessel, being able to use such a stone anchor in order to stay at the same spot. But you understand that it was very difficult to lift the anchors. And okay, let's say that they threw the anchor in the sea. How did they lift the anchor? It was almost impossible. So that is why people try to find other solutions. And then they started using metal. Anchors became lighter. At the same time, vessels were increasing in size and in weight. Still, they used these metal anchors on those ships. If I remember correctly, there are over 150, 200 patents of different kinds of anchors around the world. But the problem remains the same. Not 1 week goes by that I don't receive a call from the operations room, a call about an anchor that has been stuck. And that creates problem. And the anchors that stay there, stay in the seabed, create, of course, problems to the vessels that pass from the same spot. They also cause problems to the cables. So anchorage is something very important. And despite the technological advance, this problem remains. And apart from that, we now have the problem stemming from the size of the boats. So you have seen the cruisers in Santorini, huge boats. And these boats use all the propellers back and in the front in order to keep the boat stable. But this, of course, consumes energy. So the point is, how can we organize in these 15,000 kilometers that we have as coastline, more than France has? We have the biggest coastline in Europe. one of the biggest in the world. So how can we organize an anchoring system in such a way that will be beneficial to all, for the environment, for the marine activities, marine tourism, trade, coastal shipping. Generally, the point is, how can we come up with such a system that will serve the fishermen, the passengers of the boats, the tourists, and of course, the environment? Petros, you remember, you talked to me about this sport. During the last 5-6 years, for 10 square kilometers of Posidonia Oceanica in Sfakia, if I remember correctly, we couldn't even expand a berthing place, not even for 10 meters, because there was erosion in a significant part in the land, and we couldn't do that. We couldn't even expand for 10 meters, and that is why we need the help of the scientific community. So that if, for example, a port like the one I mentioned,
Good afternoon. Before I start, I would like to say that I am representing the president of our board, the Professor Maria Papadopoulou. She would very much like to be here with you to address you, but she could not, unfortunately. So, ladies and gentlemen, organizers, of course, on behalf of the presidents and the CEO, the members of the board, I would very much like to thank you, first of all, for inviting me here, and then congratulate the organizers, the supporters, the sponsors for this first Greek Seagrass Forum, and also salute this very important initiative that will bring together scientists, civil society, administration, the users, of course, of the seabeds, in order for them to collaborate and exchange views. OFIPK, NECA, in the 6 years that it has been in operation, has been dealing with the management of seabeds, and of course, very high on the agenda of its actions is the protection of the Posidonia meadows, with a number of actions that have to do with 5 axes. The first axis of our actions regards the protection of the Posidonia meadows, specifically by charting the dangers that the meadows face and by using the experience and the know-how that already exists in the daily management of those biotopes. Another axis of our actions is the dealing of some of the basic threats, anchoring among them, in order to install ecologic systems of anchoring and at the same time develop new innovative tools for managing those systems. Another very important axis is the support of the framework, the institutional framework and the business framework by promoting changes in the management of those systems. Another one, which is relatively new, has to do with the design and programming of actions for the restoration, whether passive or active, with some pilot actions designed for replanting of Posidonia meadows. And the fifth and last but not least axis are the actions to spread awareness to the public and mostly networking of the organization with participants in various actions and initiatives that have to do with the protection of the seagrass. In view of the institutionalization of these two new sea parks, we hope that we will develop our actions in order to extend them. And we're hoping that those actions will be more targeted and more systematic in the future. The protection of the seabed demands the collaboration of all of us: science, civil society, administration, the users, the swimmers. And this first Seagrass Forum will give the opportunity to all those people to come together and collaborate and talk and exchange opinions. And NECA is here with you to support today's initiative and also future ones that will exist in the future. So in closing, once more, I would like to thank on behalf of the administration and the members of the organization that have been working tirelessly all these years. I would like to thank you for inviting us to participate in this forum. And I really wish success for the next 3 days. Thank you.
Ευχαριστούμε την κυρία Πέτζα.
Thank you, Madam Petza. And I would like to invite to the podium Mr. Spiros Kouvelis, Board Member and Director of the EPLO, EU Mission for Ocean and Waters. This is a guest appearance, and it's a great pleasure to have you with us. Thank you, Ms. Mitropoulou. First of all, I would like to thank you, congratulate you and Seagrass Alliance, as well as all the different parties taking part in this event, as well as the IFA and the French Embassy that have always supported anything that has to do with the season. Of course, I would like to greet my friend, Mr. Pantelidis, and also say that it's a great pleasure to see you wearing this tie, and that I enjoyed your short overview of the marine tradition. Very useful, because we heard very interesting things about topics like anchoring, which is problematic, but it is absolutely necessary. I'm here in order to represent the Alliance, the EU Mission for Ocean and Waters. This is one of the 6 initiatives taken by the European Union with regard to the crucial issues pertaining to food, diseases, climate change, of course. I have the honor to be a member of the board of directors of this mission. I'm the only Greek. I do not represent Greece. I represent the whole of the European Union, and I'm very glad that this event is taking place and that this discussion will be held over the course of 3 years. You probably remember that in May of 2025, Ursula von der Leyen announced the EU Ocean Pact. And by the way, I am one of the authors of this pact. This Ocean Pact is the map of the European Union for the coming decades. It involves the different steps that we need to take in order to manage and protect the oceans. We hope that we won't make the same mistakes as we did with regard to land, but that we will be successful in ensuring the horizontal understanding among the different silos, as we call them, of the public administration and generally of the administration having to do with the governance of the seas. The fact that we have 2 general secretaries from 2 different ministries who happen to be friends, so this is a good thing, and who work very smoothly together and who know about the topic shows that we can actually be successful. So in this Ocean Pact, which has been officially announced, the map can be found, and now we have proceeded to the implementation process of the Ocean Act. This act will soon be announced. It is currently being studied by the European Commission, and this will be the roadmap that will allow the implementation of the said act. At the same time, we can see the transformation of the EU Horizon, which is the biggest research program in the world. It is a European program, and it is also the basis of the implementation of the EU Mission for Ocean. Now, I would like to talk about 4 main priorities that are associated with what you are talking about today. The first priority of the Ocean Pact is the protection and the restoration of the marine ecosystems. And of course, this includes the Posidonia oceanica, which is an endemic species in the Mediterranean. And Pedros actually explained the importance of the Posidonia seagrass, but also there are other marine seagrass meadows that are equally important. Posidonia is only the biggest meadow that exists in the Mediterranean. The second priority has to do with the sustainable development of marine economy. This is also very important. And again, I would like to tell you, Petros, that I love what you said about the work of the government and the effort it makes in order to promote the concept of carbon credits. I would just like to say that in a different capacity, as owner of the company that I have established, we conducted a study with the regional governance of Madeira in Portugal of the Sauvages Islands, which, as I call them, are the Galapagos of the Atlantic Ocean. The government wanted to create a blue bond there, and what we did was to establish that the biggest value that this could offer was the carbon sequestration. And we believe that this will lead to future steps taken by the European Union and always in the context of the UNSC. So Europe will again be in the front line. Third priority of Ocean Pact, the coastline human communities. The relation that the human societies have with the reproduction of these ecosystems of the Posidonia oceanica and of the other meadows is huge and very important. I cannot elaborate on it because of the limited time. They are inextricably linked. What you said, actually, the protection of the coasts from these seagrasses is very important. And the fourth priority that concerns us all, and mainly those who are behind the Alliance initiative, is that the fourth pillar actually is research, scientific knowledge about the sea. We don't know a lot of things. We need to enrich our knowledge. A few weeks ago, Ursula von der Leyen, in the context of the European Week for Oceans, announced the initiative of Ocean Eye, which is the initiative taken by Europe to establish the repository of knowledge along with the digital twin of the oceans that is being developed so that we can have a clear picture of what's going on. And I can tell you that the European role with regard to all this has become pivotal because unfortunately the funding coming from the United States with regard to programs like this has stopped. So Europe now has to take the lead. It has actually taken the lead and it has promoted collaborations among different countries like Greece and France. I said that I will be brief and I will stop somewhere here. But before I give the floor to the next speaker, I would like to say that this initiative taken by the Alliance is of utmost importance. We would like you also to sign the Charter of the Mission, and this will allow you to become members of this international team of people that will allow you then to exchange knowledge and to collaborate with interested parties that operate abroad. Europe funds the biggest program of applied research in the world through the Horizon. So please seize this opportunity. I know that you want to do it, and we are here in order to help you in anything you need. I'm sure that the 3 days of this conference will be very interesting. Thank you very much.
Πολύ ευχαριστούμε τον κύριο Κουβέλη. Ένα σύντομο βίντεο.
Thank you so much. Now we have a short video from Enric Sala, the founder of National Geographic Explorer, and Kristen Rechberg. They send their salutes and how the goal 3030 is connected.
We work on basically making the case and proving that protected areas make good business.
And I am Enric Sala, National Geographic Explorer in Residence and founder of Pristine Seas. And we have been working with communities and governments to create marine protected areas around the world.
We're so happy to be with you today in this convening of the Greek Islands Seagrass Alliance. It's so exciting that you're all sharing ideas and projects and case studies with each other. in this important time for the Mediterranean and your country of Greece.
Seagrass beds are so important. Everybody talks about seagrass beds, but actually the first study, which I was part of, showing the carbon sequestration potential of seagrass beds was done in the Mediterranean. So when everybody talks about the seagrass beds capture 20, 40 times more carbon per hectare than a tropical forest, well, not every seagrass bed. It's the Posidonia oceanica, right? It's the Mediterranean, our Mediterranean seagrass.
So that's what makes what you're doing so very special. Also, when you're thinking about these projects, there's doing less harm, but there's also doing good. And when we do good and make sure these projects are parked in larger protected areas, that the species aren't just protected, but the habitats, then we can be part of larger goals like 30 by 30. And I'm sure you all know that the world has agreed to protect at least 30% of land and sea by 2030. And we're on our way, but we have a lot more to do. And so when you think about your projects, think in the context of seascape scale and protected areas, and try to achieve that higher level ambition in your work.
Exactly. So in addition of looking at the direct threats that affect the Posidonia and other seagrasses, like wastewater, anchoring, bottom trawling, think of those in the context of marine protected areas to be able to produce more benefits to marine life and to people.
We wish you a wonderful time together. We're so happy to be with you virtually. I can't wait to hear all the updates from this great meeting, and thank you for all you're doing.
Thank you so much.
Ακόμα ένα βίντεο σύντομο από τη Μαρία Δαμανάκη, πρώην Επίτροπο Θαλασσίων Υποθέσεων και Αλίας.
And now we would like to see a short video of Maria Damanaki, Independent Advisor, former EU Commissioner for Maritime Affairs and Fisheries. Good evening, everyone. The initiative taken for the protection of Posidonia oceanica is a very important one and a very promising one. I'm in Lisbon, where the United Nations and the World Economic Forum have convened a meeting of the group which every year assesses the trajectory of the Sustainable Goal 14 of the United Nations, the goal pertaining to oceans. 40 people here will talk about Posidonia as well, just like you are going to do. And this is not accidental, because Posidonia, the seagrasses, are very important ecosystems. They constitute a sanctuary, a breeding site for thousands marine species. Only 20% of the big fish stocks is being reproduced there, and thousands other species live, breed there. The Posidonia oceanica is their sanctuary. So as you can understand, humanity has a great responsibility to protect this treasure of biodiversity. Do we actually protect it? No, unfortunately. The result is catastrophic in many areas of the planet. Posidonia oceanica meadows collapse. In the Mediterranean, for example, every 30 minutes we lose an entire football field of Posidonia oceanica. It is an imperative need to reverse this situation. The good news is that there are some positive solutions. There are innovative ideas. I'm a member of the board of directors of the Oceanographic Institute of Monaco, and I know that technology has advanced significantly and that they have developed a very promising program of replanting of Posidonia. In 2025, they implemented a large-scale program along the coastline of Monaco, and there are many other organizations that have shown great interest in this topic. So it is a very joyful news, the fact that the Cyclades Preservation Fund is now involved in the protection of Posidonia. I'm saying this because I know the team there, I know the organization. We have been working together for many years now. It was the first time with John Kerry that we came to Athens and we organized the conference on the oceans. And I have seen with my own eyes their commitment and the dedication to what they do. And more importantly, I have seen the tangible results that make all of us very proud. I would just like to mention the great work that was done in the context of Armorgorama that brought us in the front line of Europe. All this is good news. It is also very important the fact that there has been a collaboration with many other organizations representing a wide spectrum of activities and of competences that have to do with the protection of the environment and of the oceans. And I'm sure that this is a guarantee of very good future work. The 3 days of the conference will be very constructive and fruitful. We will be in touch, and I'm sure that we will get some very good results. Dear friends, I know that it is very difficult in our time to focus on the environment, on nature, and the protection of it. I know that there are other priorities more pressing, but it is very important for us to continue our work. At the end of the day, what we will be left with, what we have always had and will always have in the future, is nature, this planet. We are here and we need to protect the planet for us and the future generations. I hope all the best to your work. Thank you.
Ολοκληρώνουμε με 3 τελευταίες.
So we will conclude with 3 very short speeches. Let me call Mrs. Ioanna Touloupaki, Project Manager for Seacology Foundation. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for the invitation. I'm very happy to be here with you today in this first Seagrass Forum, an initiative that shows that Greece is ready to finally support seagrass meadows. The Seacology Institution from the US has already supported 463 projects all over the world under the same philosophy, the protection of nature through collaborations, through people that know the place that they live, know the seas, and live next to those ecosystems. The collaboration with CPF started a few years ago through a smaller initiative regarding Posidonia meadows. We built our trust there, and this trust brought us here together in this 5-year national scale effort called GIZA. For Seacology, this is the 3rd national initiative in its history. We took part in 2 previously, in Sri Lanka and the Dominican Republic. And regarding mangrovian forests, and of course the mangrovian forests and the Posidonia meadows are quite different, but they also do the same thing. They support food complexes, they protect shores from erosion and sustain blue CO2. This is an ecosystem around the islands that it is constantly threatened. And of course, this couldn't have been done without these best alliances, an alliance including partners that have the knowledge, the know-how, and the presence in the field. This is the quality of this collaboration. This is why we have the proper synchronicity when it comes to this time to shed some light in some things that are not usually seen. And now Annie shares her motto with us today, make the invisible visible. Of course, as humans, we can easily identify with animals, but the Posidonia meadows are the unseen heroes of the Mediterranean Sea, and they offer great services through the ecosystem. So we need to protect them, we need to give them visibility through knowledge and the daily lives of our islands. Thank you so much, and I hope this forum will have great success.
Ευχαριστούμε και εμείς.
Thank you. So, since the first years of our work, Dr. Vasilios Kapsimali has been a great supporter of ours.
Ευχαριστώ πολύ. Και εγώ με τη σειρά μου θα...
Hello, thank you. Unfortunately, the president couldn't be here with us today. The president of the Hellenic Center for Marine Research, due to some other things that he had to do, he would very much like to be here because he also always supports these types of conferences. And from our side, Mr. General Secretary, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues and collaborators and friends, it is a great pleasure to take part actively in the organization of the first Greek forum of Seagrass. This initiative comes at a very fortuitous moment because the protection of the sea is not only a scientific priority, but a necessary prerequisite for the ecosystems, the insular communities, and the developmental projects of our country. Seagrass meadows are of the most valuable ecosystems of the Mediterranean. They host biodiversity, they assist in the production of fish, they can capture copious amounts of blue anthrax, and they help our seas be healthy. But at the same time, they're quite vulnerable regarding uncontrolled anchoring, climate change, pollution, and the fragmented management of the seabeds. Under this framework, the Hellenic Center for Marine Research has already played a role for research, charting, monitoring, and appreciating the meadows, the seagrass meadows. And at the same time, we support administrative plans, the development of scientific indicators, the evaluation of pressures, and the designing of actions that have to do with the restoration of the meadows with modern tools and technology. Through scientific research, we are trying to understand the challenges of the overheating of the planet, the induction of new species, and at the same time, we're researching the dynamic of sea meadows as solutions based in nature in order to be able to adapt to climate change. This experience has been gained through the participation in numerous research projects and also through the participation of the Hellenic Center for Marine Research in various committees, networks, and working groups. This scientific chapter is always available to support public policies, the management, and the necessary movements that need to be done in specific areas. We are aligned with the European Union regarding the protection and the development of the environment and the Action Pact and the Pact of the Mediterranean, as Mr. Kouvelis said before. Now, these two pacts will shape a new framework regarding marine management by connecting the marine spatial planning with guidelines regarding biotopes, species, marine strategy, the regulations for nature restoration, and also the European Mission for the Restoration of Oceans. For us, this is not just a formality. This is a charter, a guiding map to go from knowledge to action and from fragmented interventions to long-term management. I would also like to underline the need for chartering and systematic monitoring of the seagrass meadows and all other biotopes that are connected to them, such as coral reefs and other ecosystems of deep seas. We cannot protect something that we do not know. We do not know the qualitative characteristics, we do not know where they grow, how they develop, how they interact with the environment, and the pressures they're under. The Hellenic Center for Marine Research will do everything it can to start chartering in detail within the framework of Natura 2000, as Mr. Varilidis said, and also of the new sea parks in the Ionian and South Cyclades. The Ionian Sea has very deep waters, so it demands specific know-how, modern research in great depths. The southern Cyclades need detailing understanding of the ecosystems, their use, and the pressures they're under. We are here. We will use our know-how, our scientific excellence, our experience, our research boats, and our infrastructure. We are here and we can participate in the detailing, chartering, monitoring, and management of those areas. In closing, I would like to congratulate the organizers and all the partners of this alliance for the protection of seagrass bed. Today's forum has a great value because it will bring around the same table the research, administration, environmental organizations, sponsors, and also citizens. And I hope this will be the kickstart for a new, ambitious action, ambitious policies, and more visible results in the Greek seas. Thank you so much.
Και ολοκληρώνουμε με ένα βίντεο.
And we will conclude the greetings with a video of Nikos Petrou, President of EEPF, the Hellenic Society for the Protection of Nature. The next speech, I would like to warn you, will be in French, so please, if you need translation, you need to get the headsets from the Secretariat. Esteemed guests, dear partners and friends, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to welcome you on behalf of the Hellenic Society for the Protection of Nature to Cyclades Forum. Very briefly, I would like to tell you that our society is the oldest environmental society in Greece, and this year it celebrates 72 years of operation. The Mediterranean is a unique natural chapter that supports the economic activities and the prosperity of the coastal communities. At the same time, the largest part of this coastline is under threat and under bad management, and the anthropogenic activities have a serious impact on the environment and on biodiversity, and of course have a major impact on the tourist products since they change the attractiveness of the coastal areas. Moreover, the Mediterranean is also associated with climate change. It experiences extreme weather phenomena, erosion, increase in temperature, and acidification of oceans. Our society has been involved in the management and protection of the coastal zone since 1992, when we undertook the program called Blue Flag, that was established by the Foundation for Environmental Education, which is an organization, the biggest actual organization of environmental education in the world, with over 100 member countries. The Blue Flag started as a program for the protection of coasts, and it enjoyed the support of the European Commission, which actually passed directives for the protection of the coastal areas. And today is the most well-known quality label that is immediately recognized by the visitors and the tourists. There are thousands of different points that have received this award, this recognition. And these areas can be found in 21 European countries, 2/3 of which are Mediterranean countries. I would like to tell you that Greece, with 649 awarded sites in 2025, is in the second place of the global classification for many years now, holding 13% of the sum of the coasts taking part in the program. Nowadays, our society operates in 5 sectors: interventions for the protection of the environment, projects and actions to protect biodiversity, sustainable management of tourism. 2 major programs are aimed in this direction: the Blue Flag program, as well as another one, and education, environmental education. We have established collaboration with schools and with research institutes, and generally we are very active in raising awareness. The programs that we are implementing are programs of the international organization called Foundation for Environmental Education. In the Mediterranean, we have sand beaches where this unique plant grows, Posidonia. I'm not going to elaborate on its value and on the services it offers. I believe that the experts will elaborate on it. However, I would like to briefly touch upon 2 projects that the Hellenic Society for the Protection of Nature took part. These 2 projects were CosmiMed and Med2. The first was implemented in 2016-2018, and the second 2019 to 2022. The coordinator was the Center for the Mediterranean Partnership, UCM, and there were partners from Spain, Italy, Croatia, Cyprus, and Greece taking part. From Greece, apart from the society, there was the Hellenic Institute for Marine Research and the region of Western Macedonia. Both projects aimed at protecting and managing Posidonia, placing particular emphasis on the so-called haystacks, which are washed up on the beaches and can play a crucial role in the protection of biodiversity. These two projects actually concluded in measures for the long-term protection of Posidonia oceanica. Another result of this project was a charter for the protection of Posidonia, which aimed at establishing a long-term framework for the collaboration between the local authorities and the other stakeholders, again aiming at the promotion of sustainable practices for the protection of stacks on the beaches. Another result that stemmed from this project, and more particularly from the Hellenic Society for the Protection of Nature, was that among the criteria of blue flag that were put into force since 2018, a new one was added. That has to do with these stacks that need to be preserved on the beaches. As you can understand, our society was a valuable partner in the Alliance for Seagrasses, and we took part in this alliance because we truly wanted to protect this valuable resource that Posidonia oceanica is. And I would like to thank all the partners for this collaboration. I would like to wish all the best to the proceedings of this forum.
Χαιρετισμοί τέλος. Ξέρω πήρε πολύ διάρκεια, αλλά είχε
I know that this lasted a bit longer, but everything that we heard was quite interesting. So, Frédéric, Monsieur Villiers, he's a directeur délégué adjoint de la façade maritime méditerranée, Office français de la biodiversité. This is what we mentioned before as the continuation of Anchors Away. He will address the public in French. Εσείς θα τα κάνετε.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. I am Frédéric Villiers. I am the directeur délégué adjoint de la façade maritime Méditerranée, and this is a great honor to be here with you for this first Greek forum about the Posidonia meadows in Greece. I am wearing two hats, actually, because I am a part of the French office, but I'm also the moderator of the Posidonia Mediterranean Network, MPM. First of all, I would like to say hi to all of you, to welcome you all for this forum. And also, I will be quite brief in order not to tire you, because first of all, I'm more than happy to be here with you. For MPE, this is a homecoming, let's say, that a few years ago we organized a seminar called Anchors Away, and we talked about the effects of anchoring in Posidonia meadows. For 3 days, we exchanged views with politicians, with various authorities, with NGOs, with professionals and specialists. And this view exchange was excellent. At the end, we became friends. But we also said that it was a bit sad that this seminar only lasted for those 3 days. So we started toying with the idea to create a Posidonian network. Then we had the pandemic, unfortunately, so we could only discuss via Zoom. And we started communicating with a lot of people in various countries to see who was actually interested. Now, the basic idea was quite ambitious to protect the Posidonia meadows against anchoring, which was the basic issue of this seminar. We managed in 2021 to have 80 participants that had to do with the protection of Posidonia meadows in the Mediterranean. An important part here is that most of us know this, but Posidonia is located in the Mediterranean. This is our own emblem, let's say, our mascot. We have several million hectares of about 1 million hectares in Tunisia. And the idea of this network was not just to connect scientists or authorities together, but to join all those people so that we can have power and have proper dialogue with professionals working in the maritime sector, with NGOs, with scientists, but also with international institutions and also private businesses that wanted to fund all those different actions for the protection of Posidonia. Now, after this seminar, we had the first roadmap for Posidonia and anchoring. During those 6 years, MPM did a study in order to understand the protection of Posidonia in various countries. And at this point, we saw that Posidonia, of course, is in theory protected in every country, but the important thing is that there is not always a specific set of regulations that has to do with anchoring, that bans anchoring in specific places. Anchoring is free. This is traditionally free. So we had this difficulty of understanding the various procedures and who did what, who was responsible for this protection. And of course, through our network, we try to collect all those different regulations that are in force in order to help the ship captains that often forgot the rules in order to attract them and help us protect the Posidonia. We collected all those regulations. We made studies, various studies from various partners, of course. I cannot enumerate all of them, but just one study that was quite interesting was done by WWF that was presented last year and showcased, as you can see here, the effects of anchoring on the Posidonia meadows. The study is quite recent and shows us that many countries ignore the effects. Apart from those studies, at the same time, we located some hotspots, as you can see here with red. This is where a lot of our colleagues worked so that they could locate those different hotspots. It's very important because we had GPS equipment there to locate the specific geographical location. Studies do not only lead to the protection, do not always lead to the protection. We had some specific actions towards the protection. As an example, at the Mediterranean, we had the Everydays Islands, no matter the type of the boat that anchors there. France worked for 3 years with a lot of captains in order to put in writing some regulations at a local level so that we stop anchoring so that every ship over 24 meters in length should anchor there. Now, to make things more simple, it is much easier to explain to someone that it is forbidden to anchor there because it is forbidden by the law, instead of saying that if you anchor there, you will destroy the Posidonia meadows. So in France, in 3 years, we managed to protect the totality of the meadows. The next question that you might have was this effective? Yes, we monitored it, actually. after many years, we have about 80% reduction of anchoring on the Posidonia meadows that has to do with large vessels. Of course, we need to work on the effect of smaller vessels. Apart from these policies, the idea was to pair small vessels with specific anchoring rules. We have a dozen of projects at the French level with specific funding at the national level and at the European level. Our main goal was to clean up the seabeds and also at the same time be able to reduce the effects of anchoring. This is what we did in France. It's quite recent. My colleagues will also present it. And something quite recent, Spain passed a law which is the strictest law regarding the protection of Posidonia that forbade anchoring in the total of the Spanish country in order to protect the meadows. Apart from anchoring, we tried in this network to collaborate with others and follow other priorities. Our main goal was knowledge. We have millions of hectares in the Mediterranean, but chartering is quite old. When we're close to the beach, for example, we can notice the meadows, or if we have data from a satellite. But there's also another sector that is not quite developed, especially in the countries of the north. So we have organized various webinars with experts to showcase how this data can help us. A huge project has been completed regarding the active restoration. So, as you can see, we're talking about restoring the meadows. This is something quite fashionable now. And this is also developing quite quickly. There was understanding between the scientists in order to have specific guidelines so that we can determine this process, not only in a scientific way, but also from a socio-economical aspect. This project will be presented on Thursday morning at the European Committee. Active restoration, technically speaking, can function, can have results, but there are three specific points here. Number one, the cost. It takes a lot of money, much more than passive restoration. Second thing, in order to do that, you shouldn't be under pressure. We restore specific parts that are in bad shape, but when pressure increases, we do not have this opportunity, and we allow nature to take its course. When it doesn't function in special occasions, we can talk about this type of restoration. We're trying to restore one species, but the results are much more complex. Today we have a monitoring, and we want to see if our efforts function or not. We haven't exactly done everything that we could. And one last part, we know that all the people dealing with the Posidonia issue are passionate about it. They give their time, they give their efforts, their knowledge, and of course, money is always an issue. But I believe that every project needs to be funded at the European Commission level, and there's always a loss, dysfunction cost. We work hard to think of different funding tools that will allow us to develop other mechanisms of funding. We have the carbon credit, for example, and at the network level, we have this or those tools. And the biodiversity tool. This is quite important because the Posidonia meadows in Greece are important. When I try to summarize this for the media, I usually say that the Posidonia meadows are the Amazon forest or the Great Barrier Reef, the Great Coral Reefs, because they are very important. They have important presence for everyone. The Posidonia meadows offer a lot to society, 100,000 euros per year per hectare, meaning that a French judge in 2024 decided regarding a case against the captain that destroyed a Posidonia meadow. He had to pay a huge fine in reparations. What we need to keep in mind is, of course, the high amount that the captain had to pay, but at the same time, there are three great values: carbon, the Posidonia fields are the home of the fish, as my children like to say. We have a lot of fish that live there. And the third thing is that Posidonia meadows will help the state or a society and help against corrosion. And of course, we have the CO2 percentage. This means that the carbon credit is because of the Posidonia fields. We tend to underestimate this invisible ecosystem. This is why we have all these initiatives about blue bonds, etc. This has a huge dynamic and a huge role for the future. Now, I will not give you a lot of details. I don't want to tire you about all those events. Since 2019, this network has been active. And also we had a lot of parties, and our goal was to make things more visible. MPN started taking part in various fora so that we can spread the knowledge about Posidonia. We took part in the One Ocean Summits in different COPs in Barcelona, Slovenia, Egypt, UNOC in 2025, in Nice. And today, this network has more than 200 members from 13 countries in the Mediterranean basin. And our goal is to have a complete forum that connects all those dots, connects all those partners. Sometimes it gets quite scientific, but we don't want to keep it very scientific so that we don't lose the society. We want to connect all those members so that we can conclude a lot of different projects at a European level. Now, a few advertisements, a bit of advertisement for us. If you want to join, it's free. It's very simple to become a member. We organize one meeting every 6 weeks from a period from January to March. Despite the lack of in-person meetings, we have about 40 people that participate in almost every internet meeting that we do, online meeting that we do. This governance that we have is excellent, and all those international institutions such as CARAS, OCEAN, WWF, Blue Seas are often active participants. In 2026, today, we have exceeded the first hurdles, and I'd like to see how things proceed in Greece. Posidonia meadows, of course, are facing a lot of troubles in the shores. Today, they are under threat by the extensive use of beaches that usually corrode. We have this great reduction of pollution. We have all those plants right next to the sea. We have mass tourism. Today in the Mediterranean, we see that the most tourists arrive in the Mediterranean, and we still keep on building huge hotels right on the shore. How can we have a national plan for that? and marine spatial planning in the framework of every country so that we can say, stop, this is enough. The game for Posidonia is very difficult and this hotel should not be built there. The goal is to have a world vision that has to do with building in shores, the development of ports and marines, and of course, fish cultivation. We know that fish farming today is another problem for Posidonia meadows.
Aujourd'hui, de développer un certain nombre de solutions.
And also desalination. There are a lot of solutions today for potable water. Today, there is a great impact with the rejection of salt in order to do desalination, and also waste management is also a historic issue. And fishing. Today we can see that there are specific regulations about that, and fishing takes place in the deep seas so that there is no problem. And we also see that there is not great damage. But we also have climate change. The foreign species that come to our seas. Under this French framework, the Posidonia meadows are being reduced, actually. We see some reduced numbers, but of course, let's not forget that this is a part of the fauna. So we have, unfortunately, a reduction in numbers with the increase in temperature, the increase in the temperature of the seas. But the question is how to deal with all of that. Of course, we have some positive markers in specific zones where the Posidonia meadows after 10, 15 years are starting to grow again. We have scientific publications that tell us that they can regenerate, but it takes time. We should leave time to nature. Of course, we could spend a lot of money, but after 10, 15 years, we see that they regenerate. That's important. And this is why we should open the dialogue. How long should we allow nature to breathe? This is all that I was trying to explain to you. We have strategic goals in the framework of the network that lead us in 2030. We dream, but we can also be realists. Up to 2030, we would like to have a fully operational Posidonia observatory to see what's going on, to see all the announcements and the goals. There's a constant chartering of the Posidonia meadows and also innovative solutions. Today, it's quite difficult to charter all the pressures, all the difficulties, but as a network, we would like to help for the passing of new laws, of innovative solutions, or funding mechanisms. We will use technology. We're not obliged to only use one method, we can use various ones. Furthermore, we should have a real framework regarding the legislation. Today, the Posidonia meadows are protected in pretty much every country, but there is always a sign of degradation. So we would like to protect the species and working regarding regulations. And this is the job of every state, member state, and every state of the South. We're talking about the regulatory framework here. I think that we're all convinced that the meadows are important. In my opinion, the Mediterranean population is not fully convinced. We've been trying to do that for 20 years. All countries have been funding campaigns. So how can we take the next step? In France, we have created the Posidonia Alliance between the public and the private sector that does specific projects and utilize various institutions. Another thing has to do with specific actions. Because of the vessels. In order for a project to proceed, we need three things. We need administrative ease. We need a manager and specific procedures. There are specific sectors where many ships dock, so we cannot forbid them from docking there, but someone should be managing this situation. Third, money. If you have funding, if you have support from the authorities, with an easy administrative process, things will go well. If you do not have this trifecta, the project will just remain on paper. So the idea of this network is to find best practices and also see how all those things operate. For us, the goal of the network is to keep growing and continue the effort. Well, I'm sorry, I am quite over my time, says the speaker. Short-term perspectives. This is what we're trying to do right now. You all know Mr. Pejan, who is a scientist. We would like to update his guide on the Posidonia meadows. There are a lot of subjects there that need to be updated. All students will read this guide, but it is from 2006. So the thing that we need to do now is to include the current information, what is important, what is valid, what is in force when it comes to the Posidonia meadows, and all the important information. Today, we have specific ecosystem indexes in order to protect the environment. So I invite you all to Monaco in September 2026. It's very important for us, for MPN, especially about funding. When we find a sponsor, we will ask for three things. How can we guarantee to them that the project will finish in 3 years and that in 3 years is going to end? What is the final cost? Well, as an example, the Anchorage example, which was the simplest, we had a study in Blue Seed. The goal of this study was quite specific. MPN wants for every country to agree for the 10 priorities that it has. If tomorrow you get 1 billion euros, not for research, what would you do with this 1 billion regarding Posidonia meadows in order to have effective results? It's not a simple answer. So we'll see you at the end of 2026 for the first results. And another project, which is very important, is Tunisia. Tunisia is the place where meadows, Posidonia meadows grow. So we have a huge opportunity because in Tunisia, we do not just talk about Anchorage, but the fishing has a great impact there. And also water pollution. We have created this project, which we call Penelope, with various partners that will help us develop specific tools. And one last thing, there is a webinar on the 30th of April. It's very important also. The European Commission, along with the law of restoration, it will ask for every member state to suggest until the end of the year a first set of rules regarding the protection of Posidonia meadows. This is just for your information. This will all happen during the webinar. So let me conclude with our motto, which I think is very important for MPN. We're nothing without the others. It will take time, but we can go further. I have a very short video, just a couple of minutes. May I show you this video? That was translated by the members of the Hellenic Network. Thank you so much, and thank you for inviting me in this conference. Thank you.
Welcome to ancient Greece, home of Poseidon, god of the sea and the ocean. Here and only here in the Mediterranean Sea is where the unique Posidonia oceanica grows, a seagrass that provides valuable services to the Mediterranean. First of all, Posidonia oceanica act as real lungs. They release great amounts of oxygen and absorb an important share of carbon dioxide, the equivalent of 9 1.5-litre bottles a day for just 1 square metre of the plant. Then, Posidonia meadows are an ideal habitat and food source for hundreds of marine species. Unfortunately, this aquatic Amazonian forest is at risk of extinction. Coastline development, overfishing, pollution, anchoring of large ships. Human activities that wreak havoc on this environmental treasure and inexorably destroy tens of thousands of hectares of Posidonia meadows. But here's the thing, a 2.5-metre thick seagrass bed goes back 4,000 years. And with a very slow growth rate of 1 metre every 100 years, Posidonia meadows cannot grow fast enough to make up for such losses. Urgent action is needed, especially when considering that Posidonia meadows bring in over €100,000 per hectare every year. Fortunately, the MPN, the Mediterranean Posidonia Network, is committed to fighting against this scourge by bringing together various public and private stakeholders from the Mediterranean countries. The MPN works relentlessly on Posidonia preservation projects, such as the development of anchoring and eco-mooring solutions, particularly in protected marine areas, the implementation of coastal and harbour structures respectful of Posidonia meadows, or the promotion of artisanal fishing practices. Immediate action is needed. The MPN has set a goal of protecting 100% of Posidonia oceanica by 2030. So why wait? Only now and together can we protect Posidonia, our unique and precious Mediterranean heritage.
Pour vous dire que ce film est disponible dans toutes les langues. Ce film est pour vous et vous use it. We translate it in each language of the Mediterranean country. So if need be, it's free, it's available. Merci à tous.
Not least που λένε οι φίλοι μας εδώ, όχι οι Γάλλοι, αλλά τέλος πάντων.
Last but not least, we have with us Maria Salomidi, researcher at the Institute of Oceanography of the Hellenic Center of Marine Research. We have mentioned her name repeatedly, and she will give us a snapshot of the Greek reality. And thank you in advance, Maria. Good evening, everyone. Esteemed guests, dear friends, I'm in the fortunate and unfortunate position of being the last speaker. I understand that you must be feeling tired. The good thing is that many of the things I was planning to say have already been mentioned, so I will try to be as brief as I can. Of course, I hope that I will facilitate the interpreters by doing so. As Annie said, whom I would like to thank deeply and personally, and generally, I would like to thank the team of CPF, because as the Hellenic Center for Marine Research, we are accustomed to address the people, the citizens, the schools, anyone who is interested in listening, and to share our concerns about the seagrass meadows or about other ecosystems. But very few have the boldness, the effectiveness that we have seen in CPF. So I would like to thank them warmly for all the support. So, as I said, following the very impressive speech by Fred, I would like to give to you an overview of what is the reality here in Greece with regard to the Posidonian meadows. I'm not going to give you more details about the Hellenic Center for Marine Research. I have been covered by our director. However, I would like to start by touching upon a phenomenon which I find very interesting. A phenomenon that becomes an obstacle to our work. Previously, it was mentioned that people tend to prefer animals, movement, eyes. These are characteristics which are associated with the neurological structure of the brain, and that is why they attract our attention. Plants, on the other hand, are considered to be indifferent, and that is why our brain tends to ignore plants. And this, of course, comes in full contrast to the importance of vegetation, which, of course, constitutes the basis of our existence. We tend to downplay the importance of vegetation, and we tend to take very limited initiatives in order to protect plants and vegetation in general. This is true when we're talking about land. It is even more true when we're talking about the underwater vegetation. We are so-called plant blind, and that is why I'm using this description. And I'm doing that in order to explain to you that what we're doing is very difficult, since we're having to do with the vegetation in the sea. I'm very glad that we are all here today and we all talk about Posidonia. This is not something that prevailed in the past. The Greeks never had a term for Posidonia. It was Linnaeus who actually gave this name, whereas Aristotle was talking about these meadows as belts because of their structure. It was this term that Aristotle used. There was not an official name, and the fishermen, the people of the sea, who obviously knew and were interested in these meadows, were calling them seaweeds, but rather differently. But the truth is that they are not seaweeds, they are plants, and this is very important to keep in mind. You heard all the descriptions of Posidonia. I also like the intervention made by Eric Sala, who said that, of course, all seagrasses are important, but Posidonia oceanica is something different, something far more valuable. We know that Posidonia meadows are one of the most productive ecosystems globally. We know their importance when it comes to the sequestration and removal of carbon, oxygenation of waters. It is a very powerful filter that cleans the waters and the coastline. And of course, Posidonia oceanica plays a very important role in the shaping and protection of beaches and stack systems. And of course, it has an extreme importance for the protection of biodiversity and for the protection of fish species, the ones that are traded. And it plays an equally important role not only for the marine biodiversity, but also for coastal biodiversity. Since we are in this meeting between Greece and France, I need to talk about François Boudouesque, who was a great marine ecologist. He was the person who set the foundations for the study of Posidonia, and he was also the person who managed to characterize Posidonia as a forest. This actually led to a more ecosystemic approach to this plant. It is not just a plant, it is a forest. All this scientific knowledge on seagrasses has successfully been conveyed to the institutional organizations, both at national, European, and international level. And there is now a very strong framework for the protection of the seagrasses. One of the most important problems that we need to grapple with, however, as it was mentioned previously, is that in order to protect these seagrasses, it is very important to know where they are. And we are lagging behind with regard to that, even though two very important efforts have already started, and I'm talking about systematic efforts, nationally coordinated efforts for the mapping of the seagrasses. The first, in the context of the development of Natura network in Greece between 1999 and 2001, when under the scientific coordination of Dr. Panayotidis, 57 sites belonging to the Natura network were mapped, taking into account, of course, the parameter of Posidonia oceanica. Whereas in 2015, and in order for us to meet the requirements stemming from the European regulation for fisheries, an analysis was conducted. And this analysis was based on satellite data. But later, these data are constantly updated in the field by the researchers of the Hellenic Center for Marine Research, but also by other scientists who are involved in the mapping. So right now, we have a map at our disposal. By the way, I would like to tell you that these data have been published and are accessible to all. Anyone who wishes can have access to them. So right now, we know at least where the meadows are. The approach is of limited analysis, but still we do have a clear picture. And this allows us to be able to proceed with the special planning of projects, because no one can say they didn't know. Of course, sometimes there may be a need for a more detailed mapping in order to have a better management of the meadows, but the most important thing is that no one can ever claim that they didn't know meadows existed at the given site. Through this mapping, we know that 70% of the Greek coastline is characterized by these meadows. We have the third largest surface of meadows in the Mediterranean. And this is a blessing on the one hand, but on the other, it is also a huge responsibility. And this is not just a Mediterranean responsibility. We're talking about a global one. So the most important angiosperm plants are Posidonia oceanica, but the Cymodocea nodosa species, which can also develop significantly large forests. This is actually the biggest national infrastructure that cleans the sea, protects the coastline, which, of course, is to our benefit. It also produces fish. It supports and protects biodiversity. It's a huge infrastructure that captures and removes carbon from the atmosphere. It is a very important asset that we have. Lately, some financial assessments were made of the ecosystemic service offered by Posidonia oceanica. Tomorrow, in the context of the first session, you will have the opportunity to hear more on that by Ms. Stamatiadou. So based on this financial assessment, it amounts to 8,000 international dollars, 6,500 euros per hectare per year. The meadows have an economic value. I invite you to the first session tomorrow in order for you to hear more on that. But here you can see a map of the different stations and the framework of directives in the context of which we monitor seagrasses in the country. It is a huge network, 150 sites. And as you can understand, this is very important because for the very first time, we use real data in order to understand the state that the meadows are. And it is one of the biggest national database that will play a very important role in the future in the context of the efforts that will be made for the protection and restoration of our meadows. By observing the directive for the protection of habitats, we are now in the position to offer a national assessment of the meadows in Greece. Unfortunately, the state therein has been characterized as non-favorable, non-efficient. And even though the functioning of the meadows continues to be very important, things are far more difficult when it comes to the surface that is under enormous stress. And generally, there is an increased fragmentation of meadows in most of the cases. What we can also see out there on the field is that despite the strong framework of protection of the meadows, there are many pressures that continue to be exercised on the meadows. I'm not talking only about fishing. There are many other factors that come into play. There are pressures that are illegal, like, for example, fish farming that are located above Posidonia meadows. And at this point, I would like to say that the Posidonia meadows, not all meadows, are a priority habitat, which means that they are protected across their surface, not only in the context of the Natura network. Unfortunately, in the Greek legislation, the protection of Posidonia is promoted only in the context of the Natura network, whereas according to the directive for habitats, Posidonia meadows need to be protected in all their surface. And by the way, there are no counterweight measures in the directive for the priority habitats. There are no counterweight measures. However, there will be in the future, we hope, and we also hope that many other initiatives will be taken in order to ensure the protection of the meadows, and so that all damage to Posidonia oceanica becomes a part of the past. Here you can see some published work published by the Laboratory of Marine Angiosperm Plants in Crete under the coordination of Ms. Apostolaki. And you can take part in tomorrow's first session in order to learn more about this. There is also the Artemis program, which for the very first time attempted to restore seagrass meadow in Crete following the removal of fish farms from the area. It is a very interesting program. It has several different dimensions. And I would encourage you to be present tomorrow in order to learn more. Moreover, the Hellenic Center for Marine Research has been very active in the study of the vulnerability of the marine seagrasses and especially of Posidonia oceanica. It is well known that the difference in temperature, the increase in temperature, the heat waves have become all the more frequent with detrimental effects on Posidonia oceanica. The climate pressure has led to the reduction of the productivity of the meadows, and it has intensified the frequency of their blooming. Someone may hear that a meadow bloomed because I said it is a plant and it blooms. When I see a meadow blooming, we feel that something beautiful is taking place. In reality, this blooming shows that the plant is under stress. Moreover, another very interesting work, again by the laboratory of Ms. Apostolaki, is the study of the meadows in the southern Aegean, of the reserves of blue carbon in the Posidonia meadows. This is a very important work and has given very interesting results. Maybe what is the most important for us is that if we protect the meadows of the southern Aegean, taking into account the blue carbon that these meadows bury underneath, because this carbon is buried under the meadows. It is not something that you can see with the naked eye. So if we manage to protect these meadows, when we will get 13% of the goals for the climate that Greece needs to reach. And this has been widely understood by the political leadership because, based on the results that I mentioned previously, now, altogether, we are trying to find a way to incorporate the seagrasses in the National Plan for Energy and Climate. And by the way, right now, there is a LIFE program that is in development under the coordination of the National Technical University. The purpose of this program is to come up with a way that will allow us to do that exactly. Again, I repeat that tomorrow in the first session you will have the chance to hear more on that. And of course, the Hellenic Center for Marine Research offers this data to the people who are responsible for the development of the national plan for the restoration of the meadows. In the context of that plan, we are responsible for the protection of the marine habitats. According to Article 5, the seagrasses and the marine meadows in general constitute the first priority. We heard a lot about the anchors. I don't want to say more. What is important to say is that when we first started realizing the damage caused, we're talking about hundreds of thousands of recreational boats every year, and they keep on increasing. There is no limitation whatsoever. Everything is uncontrolled and uncontrollable. And anchor can destroy dozens or even hundreds of plants. And even the chains that are used when the anchor has been stabilized on the seabed continue to destroy the meadows. So the apprehension about this phenomenon and its extent led to the organization of the event Anchors Away. And we are very happy because thanks to this initiative, the Mediterranean Posidonia Network was created, members of which, apart from Fred, are many others. And many of these members of the network will be present tomorrow. So I invite you to attend tomorrow's sessions in order to learn more from the European experiences and best practices. Thanks to the partnerships that we have developed, we have gotten funding that allowed us to do extensive research in order to better understand the impact of anchoring in Greece. We have studied some very popular places where vessels anchor, and there we found that there has been 74 to 89% damage on the meadows. We have lost 4 up to 80 hectares of meadows. So you realize that we are talking about a very serious problem. And of course, we understand how important it is to resolve this problem. We understand, of course, that the vessels want to anchor. No one has ever said that we don't want them to anchor, but still, there are other ways to do that. Instead of throwing the anchor in the sea, instead of getting stressed of whether the anchor has been stabilized, we can have specialized buoys. For example, like the ones that you can see on the screen. What we are asking from these anchoring buoys is just to be there so that the vessels can anchor without using chain or anchor. And this will allow us to reduce the damage of the seabed. The important thing to keep in mind is that we do not allow the anchor to come into contact with the seabed. Not the anchor and not the chain ever come into contact with the seabed. And this is how we protect our seas and we preserve the wonderful waters and the wonderful beaches for which so many tourists come to Greece. We are in the stage of restoration. Of course, does this mean that we didn't do that well with the preservation and the protection? Maybe. The fact is that the Hellenic Center for Marine Research is in the front line. It has many national and international collaborations. We develop methodologies, we implement protocols. We are trying to give an answer to the question of how a damaged seabed can be revived. What is important to tell you is that even though, technically speaking, we are close to achieving the technical restoration, our thinking and our approach is based on the passive restoration. The first thing that we need to do is to stop the pressure that leads to the degradation of the meadows and of the seabed, because otherwise there's no point taking any other action. There are many smart techniques of restoration. If you learn more, you need to be here tomorrow in order to listen to Mr. Giannakaris. Of course, one of the main difficulties is to find an area that is no longer under pressure. This is the most difficult thing to do here in Greece. The fact is that very few areas are protected from these pressures. So the main difficulty that a scientist involved in restoration will encounter is to find these areas that are no longer under pressure. It is also very difficult to work underwater and to try and restore these meadows. This is a major challenge. And for this reason, I repeat, what we need to have as a priority is passive restoration. The Hellenic Center for Marine Research, as Mr. Petru said, took a leading role in showing the importance of the leaves of the seagrasses that can be found on the beaches. We actually developed a program in order to prove this importance. In the context of the program, we realized how biased the visitors were when it came to these withered leaves. We saw that they wanted these withered leaves to be removed from the beaches, even though these leaves offer great protection to the beach. And of course, this is the result of the lack of environmental awareness. The problem is not just that the people don't want these withered leaves. The problem is that the municipalities or the hoteliers who are responsible for the beaches remove them with heavy trucks, and in reality, they destroy the beach itself by removing these withered leaves. They remove sand, they then throw it to the landfill. And of course, then some others will use other filling materials on the beach. And this is the worst thing that can happen when it comes to erosion, of course. So what we realized was that this detrimental approach to the leaves is the result of a lack of environmental education and awareness. And that is why we decided to join forces with the Hellenic Society for the Protection of Nature, which, as you have already heard, is responsible for the management of the network of blue flags. And through this network, we promoted various different videos, posters, flyers, all of which aimed at informing the visitors and the managers of the beaches on the importance of this plant. GISA is in reality the synthesis of all these ideas that were mentioned before. And it allows this beautiful coexistence of different organizations that are very active. It basically tries to reverse the phenomenon of the plant blindness and to promote the importance of seagrasses. We have been new in our work, in our field. We were only established a year ago. However, we have done some significant work. We have already integrated the data of the distribution of meadows in Donia app. Donia stems from Posidonia, and it is an app that has been developed in order to help the owners of vessels identify the areas where meadows can be found. Any country that has presence of meadows can offer data to this app. Those of you who have the application know how useful data can be found there and how you can use this data in order to see the location of the meadows. And if you do that, you will see that these meadows surround our beaches. Another project that will soon be implemented will try to engage the citizens in the recording of the presence and of the pressures exercised on the stacks of Posidonia. So basically what we are doing is mobilizing the world. We will use, quote unquote, the visitors of the beaches in order to get valuable data and in order to inform them on the importance of this plant. That's all on my part. Thank you very much.
Yes, we are quite delayed, but nobody wanted to leave. We learned so many things. It was quite interesting. Thank you very much for being here with us. We'd like to thank you all for sharing your knowledge with us. General Secretary, thank you for staying until the end. Politicians never tend to do that. We'd like to thank you, Monsieur Villiers, Mrs. Salomidi. Just let me tell you that Maria gave us a nice spoiler for tomorrow's sessions. We're starting from the morning until the evening. Good luck to all of you. But we had to meet all together, science, civil unions, civil state, the political world. So tomorrow we'll listen to equally important things regarding education, municipalities, companies, businesses, research, social participation. We invite you to stay until the end. And in any case, you can find all the speeches online. Well, the day after tomorrow, on Thursday in the morning, we have some closed sessions, working sessions, but at noon we have the interesting panel about funding, the elephant in the room, as we call it. And we will conclude with the film. Now we can finally discuss with each other outside. Frederic and Marie will be with us tomorrow again, and outside at the yard with a little wine, we can continue our discussion. Thank you so much. I would like to thank the vineyard Yen Chris. Thank you.